L'engagement que je prends aujourd'hui, c'est de faire cette transformation-là de façon graduelle et avec toute la transparence nécessaire pour que vous vous sentiez en confiance au cours des prochains mois. Je tiens vraiment à vous remercier. Ma mère m'a toujours dit, un éléphant, c'est un gros morceau, puis ça se mange une bouchée à la fois. Le système de santé, c'est un gros défi. On va le faire ensemble, une journée à la fois.
One day at a time, that's how Christian Dubé says his healthcare transformation will happen, giving us an analogy to eating an elephant one bite at a time. Yes, Bill 15 was a pretty darn big bill. It was passed while you were sleeping on Saturday morning. With more on Bill 15, let's go to André Fortin from the Liberal Party of Quebec. He is the official opposition critic on matters related to health. Mr. Fortin, welcome back to the show.
Good morning.
First things first that I want to get to before we get to the adoption of the bill. I want to point out you were that hawk in the National Assembly on the amendment that could have impacted English healthcare in this province. Now, at the end of the day, it's and correct me if I'm wrong, at the end of the day, that amendment was basically rewritten to be the same thing that we had in place before Bill 15 was adopted. Is that correct? Where did we end up on healthcare services in languages other than French?
So the first amendment that was introduced by the CQ government basically said the Board of Administrators of Santé Quebec can unilaterally decide to remove bilingual status of hospitals if the demographics have changed. So they pulled that amendment and reintroduced a new amendment following much debate on the issue over the past couple of weeks. And what it basically says now is that the Board of Directors of Santé Quebec can remove a bilingual status of a hospital if they've run it by the English Services Access Committees beforehand. The difference between that and what's in place now is that Santé Quebec is the one who initiates the process, whereas now it would be the local healthcare establishments who would initiate that process. Between you and I, there's not a local healthcare establishment that would basically come to the government and say, we want to remove our bilingual status. The fact that it starts from Quebec City, that it starts from one province-wide board, is not as, it doesn't have the same safety standards as currently in place, but it's for sure better than what was proposed initially by the CQ government.
All right. So let's talk about the bill in general. Closure invoked by the government. They get the bill through. This is law now. This is it. This has happened. So what are your thoughts?
Well, it's never perfect it's always unfortunate to invoke closure, and especially in this case, because there was no reason to do it. Everybody was working together. All the parties were working collaboratively on this. It was a big bill. It took a lot of time to study, but everybody was working towards it. There was no filibuster here. There was no reason to ram this through, especially when we hear Christian Dubé's ads now saying, well, it's a gradual process. It's going to take years to be put in place. Well, if it's going to take years to put it in place, what's the emergency? What's the urgency here for which we needed closure? But you're right. Now it's law, and to me, the more worrisome parts are the fundamentals of the bill, the impact it's going to have on the healthcare workers and on the quality of services that are given to Quebecers.
Do you see, and maybe this came through the amendment process and the process that you and other opposition parties took part of, but do you see the good coming out of this? And I'll just say, we played some of Christian Dubé's video, and to watch that video, it's 2 minutes of him saying nothing over two, it's like you watch that video and say, I learned nothing. But I will say this, he actually did an Instagram post with some of the things that will change in point bullet form. And this is one thing that I faced of late, just trying to get healthcare services. I've got a child coming in January, and we've run into the problem, me and my fiance, where they'll say, oh, you can't get service here at this CLSC. You have to go to this one, which is with your postal code. And apparently, this is one of the points he says, you can get care anywhere. It doesn't matter what your postal code is. And to me, I saw that. I said, oh, that's a good thing. So is there any good stuff that you think has come out of Bill 15?
Well, to the specific issue you mentioned, that's already in the law. What the minister is saying is, well, it's in the law. We're not doing it now. We'll we'll do a better job of it. And if that is true, great. But that's not an advancement of Bill 15. That's just the fact that government should be doing what's already in law and what it already should be doing. So if it becomes a government priority and they put resources to it, good, because you're right. If Laval can offer services that Montreal can't offer, I'm sure people would be more than happy to make the drive over or take the subway over to get it done. But to us, there's two things here. The real risks of Bill 15 are demobilization. You're taking a lot of local powers away from your volunteer board of directors, your volunteer doctors that get involved on all the local healthcare committees in their hospitals. Same thing with nurses. You're taking a lot of the innovation that comes from the ground and saying, I'm going to apply the one solution that comes from Santé Quebec. And everybody warned us of the demobilization. And the other risk is for Montreal specifically. By allowing people to move from one region to another, and it can seem logical. If you're in Montreal and your spouse gets moved to Quebec City, you shouldn't lose your seniority. Absolutely. But in this case, I don't think the government has really measured the impact on the Montreal healthcare network, because there's a lot of healthcare workers who simply can't afford to live on the island. They live in Repentigny, they live in Vaudreuil, they live on the South Shore. And if they can from one day to the next decide, I'm going to move closer to my home so I don't have to fight traffic every day, what does it mean for the Montreal network? And we haven't really debated that. The minister refused to do it, so we don't have an analysis of what it could potentially mean for the Montreal healthcare network.
So, Andre, I can call you Andre. Andre,
sure.
This government is very unpopular right now, right? We've seen the polling; they're not doing well in the polls.
Yeah.
Could that be a good thing in this matter? Because they probably can't afford a bad bill. They can't afford for healthcare to get worse, right? Because they're already in the toilet poll-wise.
I don't know if it's about them or if it's about Quebecers, really.
Mm-hmm.
Quebecers can't really afford for the healthcare network to get worse. We are now today experiencing, let me put it this way. There are more Quebecers waiting for surgery today than ever in the history of Quebec. There's more people waiting for a consultation with a specialist than ever in the history of Quebec. There's more people waiting for home health care services than ever in the history of Quebec. So I'm not so sure it's about the government and their popularity. I think it's more about, can we as a society afford to have worse health care than we do now? Probably not. But can we afford to wait 2, 3, 4 years, like the minister says, before his bill actually starts to have effects? We would have liked to have seen a lot more short-term solutions. And the fact that we worked on this bill for the last 8 months kind of prevented us from doing that day-to-day improvements to the healthcare network that we need to see right now.
On waiting lists here, because this is another example here where I'm like, okay, will Bill 15 make things better? So this is what the government is saying, is that Bill 15, people will now know what their place is on waiting lists, right? So you'll know where you are in the list. And then if you can get an option, let's say the waiting list in Montreal is long, you can go to another region for the service, or you can, and this is what the government's saying. I don't know how true it is, right? They say you can now go, we'll give you an option if the delay is too long to a private option that will be paid for. So it'll be in the private system, but the government will pay. Is that, I mean, give me, that's what they say. I want to know from you your perspective on those changes on the waiting lists.
Well, the first part of your question on knowing where you are on the list, I mean, it can be reassuring to some people. It could be worrisome to other people, but it's not an actual improvement in terms of improving wait times. It's a bit more transparent, which is a good thing, but it doesn't actually improve wait times. If you direct people to other regions and to private healthcare solutions, yeah, absolutely. That can have an impact, but it's not like there's doctors in other regions who are twiddling their thumbs right now. It's not like the private healthcare network isn't being put to contribution right now. They are being used. And the issue here to us is more, do we have enough healthcare workers to run our emergency rooms? Are more people leaving the profession these days than needs to be or should be? And that doesn't come through Bill 15. It comes through the changes that may happen during the current negotiation, the signal the government sends to its workers. And I'll give you one example that has us worried about Bill 15 is they kind of run the idea of Bill 15 and how they view the healthcare system as a pilot project in the Mauricie Centre du Québec. And so they forced nurses to work every second weekend, no matter their seniority. They forced nurses to work in some departments where they haven't worked in years and years. And just over the last couple of months, 200 nurses there have resigned their position. So
Wow.
If that's what the government has in mind, I'm not sure it's going to be what really gives more access to people.
We'll be tracking this one for sure. André Fortin is the Quebec Liberal Party's official opposition critic on health. Thanks so much for coming on today.
All right. Have a great day.